I attended the Mission Bay Indian Day School on the fort, situated on the Fortin First Nation, but it was known as Squaw Bay, where I grew up. My spirit name is Migisa Ikwe, Eagle Woman. Well, I didn't pursue, I quit school in grade 10. And then I was married at the age of 18, and then I got into drinking, and so I drank for 17 years, and I have 2 children, and I was sober for 2 years, and then I wanted to pursue my education. And so I went to the Confederation College. I took the Native Alcoholism Worker course, and that was where I started getting taught about our history from the late Walter Linklater. And so in last year, I attended the ceremony of the 215 children and babies that were found in the former residential school at Kamloops, BC. And so that's where we were given these shirts. Well, there's 94 calls to action, and so there was a lot in there. A few that I have struck me as was a child welfare system, child family services. Like when I was growing up, my parents, it was called Children's Aid, but none of us went to Children's Aid because my parents, because we were, I guess, non-status, but my parents looked after family members. There was no such thing as getting put into the Children's Aid kind of thing. So, as it is today, there's several Anishinaabe Child and Family Services, and I think the call to action was that we develop our own Anishinaabe Child and Family Services geared to our practices and traditions and culture and things like that. And I know some of the Child and Family Services, the children were put into non-native houses and things like that. So, and that wasn't, I don't believe that was conducive to their well-being, to their spirit, to their learning and their teachings, because those weren't in the home. So, and I feel and I believe our culture, our language, our practices are very important to us, and that we should have been learning that from day one. And I know they're trying to put those in school, our history and cultures and practices, and they are coming to it's happening. That there's drumming going on in the schools, there's teaching goes on in the schools. However, that I feel that the institutions should take cultural sensitive training and learn about our history in the residential school, because it's amazing how in this day and age, 2022, a lot of people don't know about Indian residential schools or Indian day schools or our history, because there's still people saying, well, that's happened in the past, up until last year when the 215 children were found. There was still the attitudes about, Well, and the racism and discrimination, well, they should get over it by now, and it's still out there, the racism, discrimination, and look at now, last year, the bodies were found of the children. So that speaks volumes in today, this year, 2022, and we're still having to, I don't know, teach the dominant society about these things, and people that are coming up with as nurses, teachers, doctors, lawyers, and you name it, should have that should be in their training to become a doctor or whatever they are becoming, our history. Because our history has, look at the jails are all full of 4% of our population is indigenous, but yet 25% of males are in the institutions. 35% of the women are in the institutions, and things like that. So, and in people living in poverty, and the addictions on the First Nations are astronomical, and there's suicides and deaths, and every day you hear 2, 3, even on our First Nation, the addictions, the drugs, the opiates, and and that all stems from our history of residential schools, that intergenerational trauma. Even if you didn't go, and your grandparents went, that is passed down each generation. Because that's the disconnection from the families. When a family member went, like the grandparent went, and then they weren't allowed to speak their language or speak to your brother or sister, and the injustices that were done at the residential school, the sexual abuse, having to eat your own vomit, you hear of atrocity, you hear of horror stories that happen in the residential schools, and then that disconnect, that family before that, what I learned in the history when I went to the college and started learning about my history from the late Walter Linklater, is that we were living in a harmonious society. We had our own laws. It was a matriarchal society, and if there was problems within the reserve, it was called, we dealt with our own. We had a council of elders and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot stemming back from residential schools, stemming back from the Indian Act, stemming back from the loss of language, and that disconnection, is it's heartbreaking. A woman, a family, a mother or a father didn't talk to their children in their language because they had gone and they knew the abuse that they suffered, the beatings that they suffered if they spoke their language. So they tried to spare their children from speaking, and that's the language was lost. Not all, but it was lost because of that fear for the families. They didn't want them to their own children to go, and then their children went, and hence intergenerational trauma, and that communication that children have with their parents, that was cut, and the language and practicing the culture, drumming, no, it was forbidden. It was forbidden. You couldn't smoke your pipe. You couldn't do drumming or have your ceremonial items out. They had to hide them in the bush and underground and everything. Otherwise, they'd go to jail and things like that. So it was like it was like catastrophic. And at the damage that was done to our people.